Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America. I'm Don Irvine, joined by my co-host Brian McNichol.
Good morning. Hello,
Good morning.
deplorables, drags, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, dog-faced pony soldiers, and those victorious Republicans in Virginia, New Jersey, Long Island, Seattle, and elsewhere.
All right, so we're gonna get to that. We're gonna spend a lot of time on that thing today, so we can kind of unpack that. But before we start, local notes. It is cold outside this morning. At least it was. I mean, I get up early in the morning, and it's like, yeah, I don't have an ice scraper in my car. I'm out there at 4:30 in the morning trying to get ready to go to the gym. I forgot to cover my car. So I don't like this November 3rd frost deal. And
No,
also
me either.
a belated happy birthday, as you now have joined the 60 plus club.
That's
So
correct.
yeah,
That's my old
I
people
know.
on this show, man.
Yeah, big difference between 59 and 60, right?
People out there, he looks a lot worse.
Yeah.
um,
So yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
it was it this morning. Like one of my favorite things is early in the morning is to get up and get some coffee and sit on the porch. And I don't mind if it's somewhat cold. I put on some clothes and still make it work. But man, not this morning. It was way down in the mid 30s and it was bone chilling out there. Fall is here. The bad part of fall is here.
Yeah. Okay. So don't tell me that when you say put on some clothes. I mean, are you out there in your skivvies otherwise?
Well, I mean, coats and whatnot. Yeah, I don't treat my neighbors like that.
Yeah.
They've done nothing to deserve that.
No show for the neighbors.
No show for the neighbors.
All right. Well, as you have said, victorious Republicans. I haven't checked in the last hour or so in terms of what's going on in New Jersey. But let's start where you are in Virginia. A stunning victory for Glenn Youngkin. I mean, I think we knew it was going to be close. And it was a close race, and Terry McAuliffe has conceded and everything like this. But I think it's
About
still
70,000 out of 3.3 million.
yeah,
But
and
go ahead.
I think it's still though stunned the Democrats. I mean, I think that they have been in this belief that it's still us. We control. We've got the White House. We got all this stuff. The Democrats have got all the momentum. Maybe Joe Biden's ratings aren't that great at this point of poll approval, but we can do this. Terry McAuliffe is the former governor. I mean, we haven't had a Republican governor since what 2009, right? That was the last time a governor was elected Republican, right? In
Right.
Virginia. So they're looking at this as a lock. Virginia was plus 10 Biden. And they lost. So there you are. I threw all that out there. I know you have a lot to say on this.
Yeah, they he almost caught up in Loudoun, made some progress in Fairfax, crushed it in the whole southwestern part of the state, which is defined properly as a lot of Virginia, way up, like his winning percentage way up in Roanoke. The 9th congressional district of Virginia, which is kind of the Shenandoah Valley. Youngkin won by 50 points. I mean, it's unbelievable. Like, all these things that happen over and over. All his people went, one of the things that kind of gets passed in these deals is, all 3 statewide races were won by Republicans. We now have a first Black woman to hold statewide office. Winsome Sears became lieutenant governor. She's also the first Black woman Republican ever elected to the General Assembly. Still the only one, in fact. More significantly, Jason Miyares, a young attorney from Virginia Beach, defeated Mark Herring, who was a 3-term incumbent for attorney general. Mark Herring is one of these guys that took the Soros money and has attempted to, not prosecute small crimes and, has really liberalized his office and really been an effective player for the other team. And, none of that mattered. I mean, he got swept away in the tide like everyone else. Also, the House appears to have flipped. And, that was they had to make up 6 seats. And I think they got at least 6 and maybe 7. So, I mean, it was a stunning reversal of fortunes for a party had not won a statewide race, as you said, since 2009.
Yeah, no, this is amazing. I mean, so you've heard me say time and time again on this show as we have talked about this campaign off and on, that the emails I was getting from the McAuliffe campaign were to me very odd in the sense of the desperation. For a former governor and for someone who should have had a fairly substantial, the more we got into the campaign, and especially the last couple of months, the more desperate emails I got. Even the last couple of days, it was even worse. But I mean, you're getting. I mean, they put people's names on these emails. I mean, it wasn't just Terry McAuliffe and his wife, but it was also like the singer Carole King. Other prominent Democrats. I mean, they've had James Carville send out I don't know how many messages under his name, but they brought in a lot of people to do this. Joe Biden campaigned for him, which I didn't think that was a smart move in my opinion because of Biden's lower poll numbers. Obama was pushing for him as well. So the Democrats, they can't say they didn't invest in this campaign. They heavily invested in this. They put a lot of weight into this because it was in a lot of ways a big test of 2022. It does as a test of the Biden administration kind of thing, the whole
Right.
National Democratic Party, where they're going. And so this was a real slap in the face for them. I mean, Van Jones, who's no conservative, obviously, right? I mean, I think, he was basically said, the house is on fire kind of thing. I mean, it was really bad. I mean, some Democrats who've tried to be honest about it said, this is bad. This is really, really bad.
You can't dress it up.
No,
and they're blaming on, and so, instead of taking that head on and saying, what should we do? It's like, oh, it's because of race and it's because of CRT, which isn't really even being taught in the schools. And it's like, parents sat there for a year watching these Zoom classes. I know they did because I did it myself, right? And you knew what was being taught. It wasn't a question, right? We're not making it up high in the sky. We watched this happen. And, and then we're not really doing that. It's like, you are doing that. We know that you're doing that. That's one of the things is like, they kind of got caught in a lie there. The other thing is, Terry, as you said, he kind of nationalized the election. He wanted it to be a referendum on, hey, Trump is gone and Biden is in and things are better. And things are not better. That really made a lot of difference. Virginians, I mean, our gas prices are high. Our grocery prices are high. We have some supply problems down here. All that just kind of alighted, right? So let's look at some stuff here. Obama made no difference. And he both campaigns, appeared here, traveled some with Terry, and made commercials, right? Made TV commercials. Most of the closing ads at the end of the campaign were Obama pumping up Terry. It wasn't even Terry. Kamala was here a bunch. Spent a lot of time in Virginia trying to help. No effect. Biden, more than half the voters, people who voted for Youngkin, told exit pollsters that at least one of the reasons they chose Youngkin was because they didn't like Biden, right? They're disappointed or displeased or whatever about Biden. So, he did hurt to bring him. And then, at the last of the election, the last week of the election, they doubled down on parents have no business, in the classroom. There were even signs, May, get parents out of the classroom, vote McAuliffe, right? Okay. What is the difference between the Baltimore school system and the Montgomery school system? It's not really so much demographics as it used to be, right? The difference is parents are involved, right? In Montgomery, if you go off track, thousands of parents come in there and put you back, right? So Baltimore parents don't care. Average GPA of a kid in Baltimore schools, the average GPA of a kid in Baltimore schools is 1.1. Okay, they're almost all failing, right? So that's a system the parents don't hold the system accountable. Okay, so what these Democrats were asking for was to graft that onto us and get parents' influence out of the classroom completely. And it's like you want those partners, even if sometimes they raise points you find to be uncomfortable. The other thing is, Terry, especially at the end of the campaign, they thought their polling showed them, I believe, to go back and hit the COVID stuff again. Say, hey, I'm for lockdowns and mask mandates, and my irresponsible candidate opponent doesn't care about that. He's an anti-vaxxer, and even though he has been vaccinated, Youngkin, and said he encouraged people to get it, he just didn't think it should be required, right? So they mischaracterized his position, and then they attacked him. They attacked the mischaracterized position. They didn't move votes like that. That didn't, people didn't say, "Oh yeah, I want tons and tons of restrictions on me." That's getting unpopular for them. Tying people to Trump seems to have lost its edge, its power to move votes. Right? People are like, "Well, Trump's not really here. You can say what you want, but this guy is not Trump, right? And he may like Trump, and Trump may like him, but he's not Trump, and that it's kind of immaterial to what we're doing here in Virginia." And plus, but the big elephant in the room is this is a complete and total repudiation of the Biden administration, right? And that's, the proof of that is like, this wasn't just us. This was all, as I said in the opening, it was New Jersey is the hair's breadth of having a Republican governor. They're still counting votes up there, and it's like double digits margin of victory or, margin right now. All over Long Island, counselors, people of the boards of supervisors, prosecutors, county executive in Suffolk County, all that flipped to Republican last night. In New York State, this is New York State. Out in Seattle, the Republican won election for district attorney, for prosecutor, King County. How did that happen? This is, in Buffalo, they turned down the radical socialists and elected the regular old Democrat. Minneapolis defeated the police, defund the police initiative that was on the ballot there. People voted against Biden, against Democrats, against what they have done the last 5 years in every way they could last night. If they could have found another way to punish them at the polls, they would be there doing it right now.
Yeah, I know, and I we've talked too about when you mentioned Trump. I mean, that's something that I know I've brought up. We've talked about a lot with McAuliffe, is that he took that kind of Biden-esque campaign theme. It's just like I'm not Trump, so vote for me kind of a thing. If you boiled it down to the bare bones, he kept trying to tie Youngkin to Trump. And it just wasn't working. I mean, we could see it wasn't working, but it's almost like if the McAuliffe campaign, couldn't see it. And so they kept doing it over and over and over again. And they weren't gaining any traction on that at all. That connection was going just absolutely nowhere, saying that was a message being sent to the McAuliffe campaign, clearly that doing so, was not going to work. This is not, the 2020 presidential campaign. Donald Trump is not on the ballot. You can try all you want. Like you said, Youngkin may like Trump. Trump may like Youngkin. But I mean, Trump was pretty invisible for the most part during this campaign. He wasn't there on the stump with them. So, Youngkin managed to basically, get the Trump base and then broaden that to a lot of other people and doing things. As you said, parents. So I was listening to a podcast the other night, and Kristen Soltis Anderson, who is a young conservative but is deeply involved in polling and a lot of other studies and things like that over the years, she was saying that on the education issue in their own polling, that when they went to the young parent types, when they were doing this, when they identified, Youngkin was 50 points ahead of McAuliffe. And you can directly relate that to this whole, CRT and all these other things. The older people who were not parents, did not have kids in schools, they were they were leaning Democrat. They were going to lean to McAuliffe. But for the younger people, look, Virginia has been trending, Democrat for the last several elections. I mean, they've had the statewide office. They've been controlling that. They had flipped the Senate. They had flipped the House. They had all, they were moving along there to kind of making Virginia a much bluer state. And then this happens. I mean, I don't know how many times you have talked about the absolute disaster the Republican Party of Virginia has been, right? And
Yeah.
Glenn Youngkin has come in here, and he may have given them the way to turn this thing around a little bit. Now, I mean, you get the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the attorney general. People have to remember out there is that those people are elected separately. They do not run on a single ticket. They run on their own. So they could have had a Democrat. They could have a Democrat winning the lieutenant governor, or Herring could have won. The AG. Seat again. So this is a big deal. You said, yeah, 6 seats, maybe 7 seats. Yeah, we don't want a 50-50 tie there, but if they can get 6 and they flipped it, I felt going in that, even if Youngkin had lost, say Youngkin had lost 51-49, say it had been kind of the script had been reversed, but that probably could have been strong enough to have flipped the House. The Republicans would have had their strongest showing, in a long time, and would have given them hope. This is great because it reminds me a little bit of what happened in Maryland when Hogan won in 2010, and 2014, I guess it was 2014, 2018, when he won. The whole thing in there was just that it revived the Republican Party in Maryland. Fundraising, all kinds of things happened that allowed them to do a lot of other things. They haven't had as much success as they wanted to in other places because the state, the redistricting that has happened in the state, all the gerrymandering has kind of pigeonholed the Republicans into certain pockets.
That's the other thing. People think gerrymandering is a Republican thing, and I always say, hey, the most gerrymandered state in the union is Democrat.
Yeah,
because it's Maryland.
Right. Yeah,
Maryland's the worst state.
Yeah, but in the meantime, we saw in Maryland a lot of the local things, these councilmanic districts, the board of, supervisors, all the whatever they're called in the various counties, a lot of them flipped Republican, so that was a big deal. A lot of them had gone Republican for the first time in, 50 years or a century or more. So it was absolutely amazing to see that. You mentioned New Jersey. That is a type, Chitterelli, he was not supposed to be that close by most, I mean, Phil Murphy, I think Phil Murphy thought this, he'd won big the last time. When was the last time they had a Republican? It has been the same period of time. I think it was like 2009. So I think it was something similar. So, they haven't seen a competitive race really for a long time either. And there he is. He's right on the cusp of becoming the governor of New Jersey. Even if he winds up losing this race, he has, it's another damaging thing for the Democrats because it should not have happened under their scenario at all, and yet it did. So we're seeing that the Seattle thing, that whole thing in Buffalo cracks me up because that was a write-in campaign. The Democrat, he lost his primary,
and he lost the primary. He didn't campaign.
Right, he didn't campaign.
Didn't take this woman seriously, and she won the primary. And she's a Democrat socialist. And she's nuts, and her whole people around her are nuts too. And she was almost the mayor of the second biggest city in New York. And but he came back. He won pretty substantially too there, right?
Yeah, he launched a write-in campaign, and he got he was getting 40 plus percent of the write-in vote. So he was overwhelming her there. We never underestimate the power of a write-in campaign. I mean, think about Murkowski, all these things that happened in the past. We've seen this that if you put it all together and you've got your right personality and you've got some of the credentials,
you're in the right spot.
It can happen. So he's the ordinary Democrat, not like we're rooting for the Democrat, but it's a little bit of a sigh of relief to have a normal Democrat versus the AOC progressive far lefty Democrat, in Buffalo. So, they took it on the chin there, just amazing things going on around here for that. But here's my question to you, because I hear this a lot and I want to get your opinion as a Virginia resident, is that, do you think that Youngkin's victory, has he given the Republican Party a template to how to win? It's one race, right?
It's one race, and you never know how much this stuff transfers, the different situations elsewhere. But I think it says to you don't have to be for vax mandates. You don't have to be for you can be for education. You can be for parents being involved in education. You don't have to be, endorsements of these people didn't really matter. There's a lot going on there. There's a lot that's, I see Bob here weighing in. He's right. And trying to nationalize it, and it did not work. But you had a guy there who had the personality to both keep the MAGA people in the house and not scare people who are scared about MAGA, right? And the Nets tried to make it a race thing. Oh, these are race dog whistles and all this stuff. That went on and on TV last night. All these people voted for this ticket because they're secret racist. And then finally, like, I'm watching this thing at 2:00 in the morning, and CNN has some guy that used to work for Jennings, maybe his name is, I don't know. But anyway, he says he's like the token conservative on the panel, and he's like, y'all keep saying how racist the Republicans are. We just elected a black lieutenant governor and a Cuban American attorney general. It's like, at what point do you say, okay, yeah, that punch is not going to land, And they're talking about, I think they misread, what people take as a dog whistle, right? They're assigning beliefs to all these people. I think that's one, the arrogance of, we expect to win. And I think that's one thing about the Democrats in the case of McAuliffe, and definitely in the case of Murphy in New Jersey, is they expected to win. They acted like people who were assured of their success, and they were not going to lose. And so we don't really have to panic, and I think late in it, Terry realized he was in trouble, and, they started, like you say, they got a little desperate about trying to raise money. They tried to expand the tack lines and so forth. But by then it was too late. The momentum, people had made their judgments. Polling, once it went into Youngkin's favor, it went to, it never changed. He got to about where the margin of victory was, and it sort of froze the last, 2 weeks maybe of the campaign, week and a half, 2 weeks. So yeah, I don't know that there's some things people can take from it. There's some lessons you can learn, which is, do not reject the embrace, right? Do not work against Trump. He doesn't need to be there campaigning for you. It depends on the situation. You could go Texas, it probably helps you, right? In Georgia, it probably helps you, but here, probably not. So, candidates will learn that there's more room to to run with conservative policies than they thought there were in the past. I think that's one of the things that comes out with it. And also, they, take the message to them, take the battle to them. When you looked at these two candidates, Terry was sort of do more liberal stuff. And, Youngkin was like, we're going to go into schools, make sure that it's the right stuff's getting taught. Parents are part of the equation, and that, I think that was concrete. It was something people could sink their teeth into. He kind of let you know what side he was on.
Right. And sometimes I wonder too, whether or not, they stuck to this thing because they looked at California's recall election and they thought, Newsom had done a lot of Trump, and tying Larry Elder to Trump and all these kinds of things. And I think that helped him. But the whole California thing was a weird, recall election anyway. And Larry Elder and Glenn Youngkin are extremely different individuals. That right. Kind of, you tying Trump and Elder together in California where Trump is not very popular, those things can work. There isn't any way you can separate really Donald Trump and Larry Elder in a lot of ways, but you can with Youngkin. And Youngkin coming in here as, he's a little Trumpian in a way, in the sense of he was a businessman. He was into the whole private equity deal and things like that. This is a guy who's a self-made man in that sense. So he's got money, but he has no political record. He wasn't a politician. He came into this thing. He beat Pete Snyder, who'd wanted to win this. I think Pete Snyder, if it might have been a reasonably good candidate for them as well. I think this was a year where, because of McAuliffe's, the way they campaigned, either one of those guys could probably win. But Youngkin did a very good job of just traveling that line and just figuring out what they need to do. Found exactly the right balance of how to do that. I think kind of to what you're saying, that other Republicans can learn some lessons. You have to kind of pick your spots in certain states, in certain areas. This kind of strategy will work. But if you're in a deep red state, no, you don't need to kind of separate yourself from Trump. The Trump, getting the Trump endorsement and whatever time probably absolutely helps you. Trump has got a tremendous influence upon the Republican Party. But when you've got an electorate that in Virginia, that is wary of that. I mean, look, Larry Hogan distanced himself from Trump and has made great strides as a result of that. That burns a lot of my Republican friends, but I say this is a very pragmatic thing to do. Would you rather have Larry Hogan in office in Maryland, or would you rather have the alternative? At least he's there. He's the one guy who can help slow down or stop some things, the Democrat train from just totally rolling over the state. So you've got to kind of.
I think Hogan, though, he sort of foreclosed being anything beyond Maryland governor. With the way he handled that. He took care of himself, but he's never going to rise anymore. No one's ever going to talk about him seriously.
I actually think that I think that Hogan could possibly, depending upon what we're looking at, down a little bit down the line, that maybe he might take a run for Senate. I think he has people who are thinking about, and that he could, once again, that is a Maryland thing. He could do that. Outside of Maryland, it would be a tough sell.
Yeah.
Inside of Maryland,
not going to be able to raise money.
No, I mean, but he's doing what Hogan is doing right now is reminiscence of what he did for his initial campaign. Because I get, his emails now that are coming out are all going back to his strategy before, which is talking about Change Maryland. So he's basically going back to his Change Maryland database, which was the launching pad for his campaign. And going back there and talking about things and trying to get more money into those coffers. And I think he's going to look down the line and says, if I can get enough support, if I get some new money coming in or get these reactivated people and things like that, then he'll look at a Senate race down the line as the next stepping stone. Whether, could he get beyond that? I see that as a real tough thing, because in Maryland, he's popular among a lot of people, not necessarily among my very hardcore conservative friends, but he is still a pretty popular governor. And he can raise money within Maryland, but outside, it's harder. I mean,
you're going to get outraged
on the presidency is like, no, I don't see that. I mean, it's like John Delaney from Maryland or something like that. No, you're not going to do it. Even though you were the governor, Delaney was only a congressman. No, that doesn't fly. You're just not going to happen in that regard. But Hogan, I mean, a Republican wins office again. Say it's a little bit more middle of the roadish Republican, whatever. Somebody comes along and surprises us.
Right. See, okay. To me, that's the thing is we just arrived at the problem. If not Hogan, who else? Right. Because who's another Republican in Maryland that could get traction? Andy Taylor, he may be out of Congress, right? They get it redistricted. Andy Harris. I'm sorry. So,
yeah. I mean, they're trying to redistrict him out and everything like that. I think the Democrats are going to be hard pressed to do that, but they're going to do their darndest. We've seen a lot of redistricting information on the maps and preliminary maps and everything like that. We'll kind of wait and see, because it's not just the congressional districts. It also becomes the legislative districts and everything else, and our council manager. There's a lot of things that kind of feed into this, and no one really knows exactly what the final map is going to be like. I think everybody's head is a little bit spinning on exactly how much more control the Democrats are going to exert in Maryland on all of this. But yeah, I mean, this, that's the other big battle, right? I mean, so we get these victories or whatever, but we're still facing the battles of redistricting. Look what happened in Illinois. I mean, not that
Kinzinger.
Yeah, right, exactly. Not that you and I, but I heard that he may even think about challenging Pritzker. Now, I'm all for that. If he wants to run for governor and challenge Pritzker, fine, go ahead and take a shot at that. It's not going to be an easy thing, but go ahead and take a shot at that. Right. New York is trying to lay down the law there too. But you have these states, where where they agreed to do these commissions. What was it? I think it was it Colorado? I think that became one of the big things. They have a commission, and
ours just failed to do it. Virginia.
Yeah, they're gaining a seat, right? They're gaining a congressional seat. So the Democrats figured that with their growth, they should have a 5-3 majority, but the proposed map says 4-4, and they're filing all kinds of lawsuits to change that. And yet they, the LULAC is complaining because they should have they want a Hispanic district, and one of the Republicans on the commission says, look, he says, we've got a district that's got 40% Hispanic, which is the largest number of Hispanics in that district ever in Colorado history. They're trying to draw a fair map. And this is where the Democrats complain, and they're complaining now. When you read the stories about this, they're like, the Democrats were kind of forced to vote for this whole commission because they didn't want to look like they were not going to be for fair redistricting. It's like, hey, right. I think we kind of knew they didn't want fair redistricting in the beginning.
We've seen
right.
This
I mean,
before.
Virginia. You have a commission in Virginia.
Virginia, they did it with this commission. The commission didn't work out. Virginia's system before that was to sit the congressional delegation down in a room and have them work it out. And so there was some horse trading that strengthened the positions of the incumbents. For instance, where I live here in Reston is a heavily blue area. My precinct is 70-30 Democrat. So that was added to Jerry Connolly's district, which is 11, okay, and taken away from 10, which was Frank Wolf's old district, right? So the district that my old boss Tom Davis held in Northern Virginia is now D+19 because they've dumped all these Democrat areas such as Reston in there. But 10, which is Wexton now, and was Frank Wolf for a long time, and Comstock briefly, is now drifting back toward R, could go back to R in the next election because the trends are clearly that way. And it also involves a lot of Loudoun County, which is vastly and quickly flipping back to Republican. Loudoun County, I think 15 years ago, was the most Republican jurisdiction in the country. Yeah. And then it was 65% Democrat all of a sudden. And now it's like, oh, so being Democrat means that we don't get to speak at a school board meeting. Then, oops, we're not that anymore. So there's a lot going on there. Larry Sabato came out this morning and moved 5 Senate races, at least one step toward Republican. Took, one of them was a likely Democrat, became just a leans Democrat, and the others were like leans Democrat becomes toss-up. So, things moved that way in 5 races. So, I mean, he got the signal that, there's a tsunami going on out there that's, moving votes from left to right. I mean, this is not just us recruiting new people. This is people that were voting for Democrats have said, what the heck, and switched to voting for Republicans.
Yeah, I mean, so this is probably not a very popular idea with too many people, but I would like to see what would happen if we just kind of had this blind redistricting in the sense of you take your state and you start from one end or whatever the other, and you look at the population, and then you just start there and you just go contiguously. You take that, the first, whatever the ratio is supposed to be, number of people, 400,000 or whatever it is, boom, stop there, pick it up, get to the next one until you finally reach the end. Some states are kind of, they're designed kind of funny. I mean, they have little loops and little things in there, particularly if you're on the coast or whatever. It's a little bit harder to do. But I just would love to see a computer program kind of just run a scenario. If you just started from one end to the other, and then do it from left to right, east to west, and then west to east or whatever, and do a few, and just to see what would happen and see what the map would look like without any political interference or involvement. What would you get in terms of the districts, and then let the people run and then see what happens. The political machinations on both parties creates these things, and we're every 10 years we go through this battle. But I guess this is America, right? This is what we voted for. This is what we get. So I'm okay, but I'm always just kind of curious as to what would happen if you just even ran a computer simulation for that, just to see what would happen.
My argument for the thing that Virginia was doing is it does reflect the will of the voters, right? I mean, if you're in the 11th district, I mean, I hate to say it because I'm on the bad side of it, but you should want the Democrat strengthened, right? The Democrat is, you're a Democrat district, right? So I mean, you'll have fewer competitive ones, I guess, but not necessarily, because sometimes they choose wrong, sometimes things change, and in this climate, almost every Democrat's in a certain degree of trouble, right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Democrats have just, I mean, they have some retirements, some in competitive areas, some in safe areas, as of the maps right now, right? We
Right.
don't know what the maps will be going forward, and so they could have been looking at the possibility of that type of thing. They're looking also, I think a lot of them are looking, the more veteran people, about, we're probably going to be in the minority. I don't want to go back to the minority. I've been here for 10, 20 years. I've got a pension. I can make a lot of money lobbying, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And then others that are leaving to run for higher office, opening up potentially competitive seats. The Democrats are facing a lot of issues. I mean, remember, the Republicans, not that long ago, we had what, 20, 30, 40, we had a huge slew of retirements.
40 something.
Yeah,
Defections one year.
Yeah, it was a huge number,
Hard to do.
which was very problematic to find candidates to fill all of those things. But it's a very interesting situation that we are in now. I guess we'll just cross our fingers on New Jersey and see what happens. But no matter what happens, Ciancarelli, he's done a great job. Win or lose. I mean, he's strengthened the Republican Party in New Jersey. And Murphy will not have, if Murphy wins, he doesn't have a real mandate. I mean, he's going to squeak by.
Think about those, because he wanted to jack up the math of vax mandates, right, and make all that really harsh. And now it's like, well, voters didn't really tell you that. Right. I mean, that's not the signal you're getting. I would start thinking about getting off of hardcore vax enforcement if I were them, because it's not popular.
Yeah.
Say that, it's one of those. It's like it's how you ask the question, right? Do you think people should be vaxxed? Oh, yeah. Okay. Do you think people should lose their jobs if they don't take this vax? And then it's like, well, I don't know. And now you have like a third of the firehouses in New York are shuttered right now because, the mayor decided if you didn't get the vax, you couldn't work as a fireman, right? Even though you've been working as a fireman, you've been going into burning buildings and saving people's lives, but hey, you don't get that vax, you're out, So, I mean, they're really cutting off their nose to spite their face in New York City. I don't know how long that can last, sort of Stein's corollary. We're getting to the point where, things that can't go on won't go on,
Yeah, I think we discussed that a couple of weeks ago too. I think was it Southwest? They decided, they relented. They said, they weren't going to enforce have mandatory vaccinations of their employees because they were getting a lot of blowback. And they had a huge problem with the employees, the weather, the scheduling. They had a whole, where they had they canceled up to 2,000 flights or something like that. It kind of sent a message, that they
Americans going through the same thing now.
Right,
they canceled 1,000 flights the first 2 days of the week.
Yeah, it was a bad weekend for them. It was like deja vu. Can you look at that? And I'm thinking like, I'm glad I flew Southwest, but I still felt a little bit, like, hopefully the flight doesn't get too delayed or canceled or anything like that. Flying became kind of a crapshoot lately with all of that, and on vaccines, I've been kind of railing a little bit about Montgomery County where I live, because they lifted the indoor mask mandate on anything but the government buildings on Thursday, I guess it was, when I was still out in Utah, and I came back. I was like, this is great. And then on Friday, it ticked up under the CDC guideline to substantial. I don't know. I mean, okay, look, once again, I'm no scientist. I'm not an immunologist or anything like this, but the CDC has the substantial rate as, was it 50 cases per 100,000 population? Okay, 50, okay, per 100,000. It's like, why is that? I don't understand. To me, so somebody has to explain to me why this is really substantial at this point in time. And so they ticked up to like 56. I checked last night, they're at 51. Montgomery County was going to reimpose the mandate, and then they did the thing that they thought that had been proposed, which is that they relaxed the rules to say it had to be above 50 for 7 straight days before it was going to go there, or it could be lifted in total if they got to 85% vaccination rate, and they're at about 77. So they're closing in, but that's the vaccination rates have slowed down. Something like 77% is pretty darn good. We're not, I mean, 50 to 55 cases to me is like, we're not seeing a lot of deaths. I mean, once again, 99.5, 99.8% of the people survive that have been tested positive. We don't have a lot of hospitalizations. What are we worrying about here?
Right. And why are you giving it to kids? I mean, there's been fewer than 500 kids die of COVID in this whole thing. I mean, you're better off letting the kids get it and building real immunity. I mean, it sounds weird, but it's more people, more students die per year of the flu, far more that die of the flu than die from COVID. So, I mean, the schools getting into this, and the CDC is, trying to market this to 5-year-old kids. This doesn't need 5-year-old kids do not need to be doing this. And parents are lining up for it. People are just, I can hardly wait. It's like, better not be anything wrong with it, right? Because you're signing your kid up for a lifetime of it. Because then, once you do it, that's how you have to fight this. You're on that train forever because you've genetically changed your ability to fight the disease. So,
right.
I mean, I don't know. I think that the whole vax regime is closer to collapse than anyone knows.
I need to ask my daughter and my son-in-law about what they're in Indiana. I don't know what the policy down, if they're going to do anything about vaccinations in schools, but I should ask them the general opinion, since my son-in-law is a doctor in terms of, even though he's into the pediatric surgery and stuff like that, or podiatry rather, I should say, not pediatrics, but so they're doing all those things as to whether or not he would vaccinate his kids who are 9 and below, ages from like 2 to 9, whether or not he would actually do that. I mean, personally, if my kids were that age, I'd say no. I'd say, and if the school system says you have to get it, I'm like, we're homeschooling at that point. It's like, I'm just not doing it. And I have no problem with any parent that bucks up against the system on this, because I think, I'll say, okay, maybe to the teenagers, maybe, but now you start getting to the 5 to 11-year-olds. I'm out of here. I'm sorry, I can't do it. All right, one more thing too, real quick. So you also mentioned the Minnesota thing because it was on our list. This was kind of a big deal because all that George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter, all of this police reform, defund the police, all that kind of stuff, kind of came into vogue. They had this proposal. They wanted to replace the police force with a public safety force, which we have talked about before from time to time about exactly what is that. And, how do you get rid of the police force? Is like, hello, I'm a criminal. This is great, right? So
somebody's trying to beat their way into your house. Do you want to call the public safety people or the police, right?
Yeah. So I think
that's not a moment for social worker. Let's get that squad car over here.
People voted for that and rejected that. So that's good. The opposition said it was all, it was about fear mongering and misinformation. That's why they lost. And
people who, so that was one of the things. Like all the networks are about, fear of this, fear of that. Republicans won because of fear. Hey, you guys are lecturing us about global warming from this COP meeting, right? And you guys are lecturing us about mandated vaxes for 5-year-old kids, and you're talking to us about being manipulated by fear? Are you kidding me? You're afraid of some goblins, man, some imaginary goblins, and you are after me? I don't think so.
Yeah, and I do want to say too that your comments about how you're watching the media and their reaction about the elections, the stuff, some of the things I was reading this morning, I think was Nicole Wallace and all these things, right along those lines about kind of all this racism, the dog whistles, just they cannot believe that Youngkin won, and so they're trying to find the scapegoat in all this, and it's like all these people who've been accusing the Republicans of being racist and all this, and think about the Lincoln Project and that whole stunt they pulled on Youngkin, and all of that, right? He's like, the media loved it, but now it's like, I am so glad that this failed, because the Lincoln Project needs to go away. Yeah. Those people need to go away. Just never return.
All they can think about, everything they do has to do with racism. So who is consumed with racism? Right?
Yeah.
Sounds like it's them, right? They're the ones who we nominated a diverse ticket and just ran our race, right? We attacked them when they wanted to destroy schools, and we said we're going to lower grocery taxes, and it was pretty much mom and pop kitchen table issues. And all the Democrats talked about was Trump and race, right? And people are like, okay, I don't think my neighbors who are voting for Youngkin are racist, right? Youngkin looked like them. You can't, if you're downstate somewhere, if you're in Roanoke, it's like, this is two rich guys from McLean, right? It's just which one wants to do the work better. They're not different. They're not,
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you mentioned this pocketbook issue thing that you mentioned. So one of the things I thought was also interesting when I was listening to Kristen Soltis Anderson was just that in her polling, what she was finding that one of the top issues was inflation. And she says she's never seen that before. Now, you have to couch this in the framework too, that she's not even 40 years old yet. So, you think about that inflation, she has not lived through a period of inflation.
She has no idea.
She has no idea. So for her, this is eye-opening because it's not been an issue during her lifetime.
That's right.
It has been an issue during our lifetime. We remember that. It was a very painful period where we had stagflation, a lot of other issues that we lived through. But it's
those people who are looking at this administration and saying, man, this is Jimmy Carter all over again.
Right. I mean, you can't avoid the comparisons to that, just at least on the top line in terms of what was going on, that way. And, those pocketbook issues or, whatever, the kitchen table issues, when you're talking about the price of meat, chicken, beef, eggs, milk. I mean, so, my example is just, we have a Walmart up in Germantown. So that's about, I don't know, 20 minutes away from where I live, give or take. They had milk prices artificially low. They were in some battle. I don't know why, but so they had
battle.
I'll take it though. They were selling milk, for $1.49 a gallon for the last year or two. Wow. You had a limit of like 6. So when I went there, they finally had to give in because these inflationary pressures finally did. So now they're up to $2.49, which is still not really bad. My wife buys a lot of eggs. She makes a lot of different things with eggs, a lot of things for our missionary friends and things like that. And so I was looking back. I had some purchases I made electronically. At least I had an electronic receipt from Walmart. So September 2020. She bought a dozen jumbo eggs for 86 cents, right? I was there over the weekend and she told me, she was still in Utah. She told me to go ahead and buy some eggs. She was seeing those same eggs in Utah for like $2.15. I paid $1.80 for those eggs. I paid more than double for the eggs that I paid a little over a year ago for. I mean, give it, we know that there's been some price, but I mean, if eggs at Walmart have doubled in price, I mean, the Walmart crowd is not the $250,000 plus people salary average. I mean, it's not the upper middle class, whatever. It tends to be the middle class, maybe the lower middle class. There are a lot of working class people that shop there. The prices are pretty reasonable. You're hitting them where it hurts. You're getting to the basics: milk, eggs, bread, all that kind of stuff. All that stuff is going up because of transportation costs and all these things.
What I was going to say is, so yeah, all of this, when you let the price of oil, and I had some guy on the internet this week trying to convince me that it wasn't Biden's fault, that they put out these memes and like, this is why the price of gas comes up. None of this has to do with the president. And it's like, the president said, canceled the Alaska leases, said no more drilling on federal lands, canceled the pipelines, right? That's when the prices started going up. That's when it started taking the big jump, right? So now our demand is going way up, right? All these devices that we're on burn a lot of energy. And so we're all charging our phones and whatnot. Everybody's plugging into, every plug you see has got a bunch of stuff in it, right? So, we're going to need a whole lot more energy. And we told the world, hey, we're going to stop producing because it's too, compromises our global warming, whatever, So you pay that price. Every good you buy, everything you buy costs more because of energy. And then they never can get that, through their heads. I mean, they killed themselves on this.
Right. No, I mean, you have to me, you have a couple of factors here. You have what Biden did. He basically is saying, yeah, like you said, let's cancel those leases on government land. We don't want these pipelines and things like that. So that restricts an ability to get things going, to actually produce. Then you have the other side. You have the environmentalists, thanks to the Biden administration being in power and the Democrats being in power. They have exerted tremendous pressure on the oil companies to go green and to basically say, yes, we are going to try to be carbon neutral by 2050 or whatever the time frame is. Therefore, they're cutting back their exploration worldwide on top of that. So these guys, like Shell particularly, these guys are not now, they're no longer, they've cut back their exploration, budgets tremendously. Well, we're not ready to handle that yet.
Right. Right. We're in fact,
you can't
we're going the other way. We need, I mean, our energy needs will be 2/3 larger in 40 years. We'll be whatever it is now, add 2/3 to that, and that's what we'll have to come up with in 40 years, almost double. So, I mean, there are big changes coming. And, unless we get some battery technology, and I know there's people out there working on that, the green is not going to play a much bigger part in it than it does now. It just can't, because you can't store the energy. So it's going to have to be, it's going to be electric. They want to have electric cars. The president has said, end of production of gas cars in the United States by 2035. I don't think that'll happen, but that's what he's saying. So if you're going to do it all with electric, that means that coal and natural gas, all that stuff comes back into play too. So if you don't want that, then, you need to let people do this as efficiently as they can, because they will figure out the way to do it. And public pressure will keep the oil companies looking for a way to do it, in as clean a way as possible. You're also moving all this production from, controlled by the EPA of the United States to controlled by China and Syria and whoever else, right? And whose environmental standards do you want to do this on? Theirs or ours, right? Most people ours, I would think.
Right. I mean, and as we've said before, I think many times, it's just that, when we talk about these clean energy, these green energy type of things, they are not as pure as the environmentalists want everybody to believe. They're, to produce them still requires, quote, dirty energy. I'll say, quote, dirty energy in order to get there. So it's not a perfect thing. And they have so many things they haven't really thought about. They haven't thought about the infrastructure of how to make this work overall. They've been so in the mind that we have got to do this for the environment because we have to save the world and all of this, that it's just, we have really separated ourselves from reality. All right, we still have a few minutes.
Manufactured fear, yeah.
Right, we still have a few minutes here. So real quickly, about G20, COP26, particularly COP26. So Greta Thunberg she's 18. Her dad doesn't have to go with her anymore. And apparently, in the Wall Street Journal, he said, "Thank goodness." He was tired of doing that. He was tired of babysitting her. He can actually go back to do his real work. But she's out there, and she's out protesting, and she's complaining about about what was happening at COP26. They really, they made this big deal about COP26, and they really didn't accomplish much of anything, apparently.
Yeah, there's something about methane and deforestation. There's more trees on Earth now than there's ever been before. I mean, I guess there's places where that's a problem that needs to be looked at, but that's a minor. That's we got to say we did something for all the money we spent to come here and hang out, right? And, it's interesting. She has gotten a lot more frustrated in recent years with, that this is a gab fest, and it's not about action, right? That they get together, it's the same people, and they get together and they tell each other the same things, and they cheer for the same applause lines, and then they go back to doing what they were doing. And, she's noticed the dichotomy between, stated intentions and actual results. And, I think she's right about that. I mean, Biden's over there. He had, this trip was kind of a disaster for him. He, I guess he used the bathroom in his pants when he was visiting the Pope. That was kind of a disaster. He walks out of there in a different suit than he walked in. That reserve suit, you don't ever think you're going to need it. And then all of a sudden, it's your lucky day. He went to sleep in the COP meeting in Glasgow. He was caught sleeping through speeches, which, again, you're not missing anything, right? You're same old people saying same old stuff. They're not going to, it doesn't mean anything to anybody. It's, all the meaning attached to it is attached by other people for political reasons. And, he had 800 people with him and an 89 car motorcade wherever he went. Okay, so what does that say to the rest of the world? 89 car motorcade, 800 people on these trips. That's one thing. Trump cut all that out. He had it down to where it was 15 people, and the security people that had to travel with him, they got out of that. They simplified that, smalled it down. It's a lot easier to secure, for one thing, and for another, you don't need all that. You're the leader. You're the guy who's elected, and you should know this stuff well enough to walk in those rooms and have those meetings. And Biden obviously doesn't. He obviously has to be spoon-fed every sentence he speaks on the world stage, or at least that's the way these people act. So yeah, it was kind of an embarrassment for the country. He's one of those. He's better off staying home.
Yeah, and in COP26, once again, just kind of like Davos, the hypocrisy of these things was that there was something like over 400 jets that were used to fly people in. Once again, you're so concerned about climate change and all of this stuff but you're still taking the private jets and whatnot and getting there. So you're just a bunch of hypocrites. You have no idea.
Right. You're not talking about nuclear. You're not serious anyway.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, Greta Thunberg, I think for all the faults and all the criticism she received, I think she's genuine. I mean, in that sense, and that she has finally, at the age of 18, she has said, "Wait a minute, it's like no, they're talking, they don't do anything." So, good for Greta on that regard. Maybe the last time I say good for Greta, but who knows? All right, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Well, a couple of sad things. One is, it looks like, for instance, I'll start off by saying that, what do these elections do to build back better? My answer is, I'd put that on the back burner, maybe try again in 2022, because, I don't know why Manchin or Sinema or anybody else would vote for big Democrat legislation right now, right? Because it's like the country told you yesterday they're not really interested. The other thing is, it was kind of weird for me last night because I got my phone and I'm watching victory roll in on the phone. And I got my TV and I'm watching the Astros lose to the Braves in the World Series. And so it's kind of end of an era for the Astros. The pitching coach announced after the game that he would not be back, and he's a big element of our success. It's pretty much expected that Dusty Baker won't be back because he was kind of brought in as interim, and I think Dusty went about as far as he could go. We lose the shortstop, 3 of our best pitchers. So this is a team that, they've been in 3 of the last 5 World Series. They've won 4 straight American League championships, and they're probably, they're to the point where the rebuild has to start. So, this was a last chance at a title with this group. So you'll hear probably less booing of them going forward, because they lose Correa. They're down to just 3 of the, core people who were involved in the 2017 stuff. So probably close to the end of the road for them in their present form.
Yeah, I want to say on the World Series. So I root for several different teams for several different reasons. I mean, still have the Texas Rangers in my heart because they had, they were the old Senators. I mean, I'll always root for the Nationals and things like that. But the Braves when they had Dale Murphy and all those guys, as well as Chipper Jones, and I'm happy for the Braves. I think I've got a Braves.
I am t-shirt. Too. I'm obviously I was for the other team, but congratulations to them. They did it. They outmanaged us. They did it right. They played good ball.
I mean, congratulations to Brian Snitker for a great job of managing. But if there's any guy that I think is deserving of a world championship, it's Freddie Freeman. What a guy!
Yeah, that's right.
So good for Freddie Freeman. He is one. He should be he should really be part of the face of baseball because he's great.
I'll tell you what. I follow these Twitter, baseball fan bases, and so like the Astros, we kind of have a group, and then the engagements with the Braves, the people who saw them in Houston and went to Atlanta to games and so forth. The Astro fans almost uniformly, those are good guys. We like them. We're against them, but they're good folks. They're good fans. They're not jerks. And so, their fans, their whole fan base, congratulations to them. Hate that it was us, but, enjoy your World Series. Enjoy your World Championship.
That's right. That's right. There'll be another season coming up next year. You'll be waiting for P's and C's to report, right, Brian?
That's right. Looking forward to it already.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed it. That was we had a lot to unpack with these tremendously amazing elections last night.
Yeah.
Off year, but that was a heck of an off year.
Yeah,
For this. So anyway, that was great. So once again, thank you for joining us. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And God bless America. And we will see you again next week. I can never, because I have to make this button right. Sometimes it does this weird. Got to be a better way. All right. Come on.